And we are live. I'm still not used to the skinny view we have for these call-ins. Welcome. Nope, not yet. This is an open call-in. If you guys want to join us here, I do have a correction for last week's when we did our little bit of review with the biggest nerd about what he talked with Ali Dawa on his live stream. I said in that Ali Dawa is most likely not going to keep this up. Ali Dawa so far has kept that up. So I just checked as of like a minute or two ago. And yes, Ali Dawa still has that video up. So I was incorrect. He did keep that up after all. Welcome, brother. Welcome. Again, the link is pinned at the top. You guys are more than welcome to join us. We're going to be talking about Christianity, Islam, whatever. This is just an open Q&A. I started doing this, I think, like a couple months ago, and seemed to be a big request for just the open conversation Q&As. I know I invited a couple of people up from a live stream 2 weeks ago to rejoin me here on this one. So if you guys want to call in, you're more than welcome. I see Truth Defenders in there. If you guys have not seen his last debate, go ahead and make sure that you visit Ministry to Muslims. That's M2M Network is their YouTube channel. Go check that out, his debate there. We did a little bit of a review on it. We did not get to the crossfire, which I'm kind of surprised in the year, except the crossfire. But if you want to see that, you got to go over there and watch it on Ministry to Muslims channel. So this is a laid back. I'm just going to be chilling here, waiting for call-ins from you guys here. He's asking the biggest nerd there. He's asking Truth Defenders who won the Civil War. Funny. So I'm hoping that the two that invited back here, we started getting into deeper theological topics. It was off topic for the live stream that we had them invited onto. So I was hoping they were going to come back and join us here, and we can continue those deeper theological discussions. But I don't know. I mentioned I was thinking as we were getting ready for this live stream, I'm like, I wonder if they actually show up. I did tell them that I was going to do this. So I needed to make sure that I went ahead and set this up for anyone to call in, including them, to come on back up and have a conversation again. So, yeah, that's where we sit right now. I was actually going to pull up some Ali Dawa stuff and see if there was anything interesting. There really hasn't been anything since that last one. There's one 4 days ago. I might pull that one up as we're waiting for anyone to call in and join us. So let's see what he has. He's talking Marvel movie mocks Allah. So let's see what he has to say about that. I have my own personal opinions on the Marvel movies because I used to enjoy them, not so much anymore. So let's see what Ali Dawa has to say about it.
Pay attention to the following clip from Avengers Infinity War. Did you see it? Let's show you again.
Be very careful what your kids are watching. Do not just brush it off as, it's just a movie, what's the harm? No, this is shirk.
Wow, okay, so that's pretty big words there. Shirk. Okay. What do you mean by that? How exactly is this shirk? I'll pull it on over to the other screen here so I can enlarge it, make it look better. There we go. So I'm not sure with this being the vertical format that's any better. Well, whatever. It's all good.
As we watch what is unfolding today in Gaza, we have to understand that opposition is counting on us to lose attention, to become fatigued, and to move on with the news cycle. And just as we can't allow them to dictate our attention, we also can't allow them to dictate the pace of our solidarity. And part of that solidarity is going to be there to rebuild Gaza, short-term, long-term. I am proud to give my support, my word of support, to trusted brothers. And
to me on
Skip that
Instagram is of the
along. Don't need his commercials constantly on there. Forgot he always does that at the beginning, adds a commercial of his own.
Avengers and the movie Infinity War. Now, somebody spotted this, and subhanAllah, if you watch carefully, which we're going to watch for ourselves, inshallah, they are writing in Arabic that Allah is not the dominion. In a nutshell, Allah is not the king. Let's watch for ourselves, inshallah, and see.
Okay, so his claim is that in Infinity War, they have Arabic writing that says Allah is not. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought that was messaged to me for a second. Yeah, the format's a little weird. This is what they are pushing now. YouTube's pushing it, so I figured I would do a couple of Q&As like this and see how it works. See how it sort of pans out. Again, you guys are welcome to join me here live and give your opinions. I'm just going through this video while waiting for any call-ins. So this one seemed interesting from Dawa. So according to him, they have Arabic writing in there that says Allah is not God. So let's see what it actually is, or was this just all clickbait and a bunch of hullabaloo?
Let's watch for ourselves, inshallah, and see for ourselves, brothers and sisters, was this an accident or premeditated?
Pay attention
I would like to pay attention
to the following clip from Avengers Infinity War. Did you see it?
No.
Let's show you again. If you pay attention to the background, there is some Arabic writing on the planet Titan. Now, I do not want to
Those
repeat
are
what these words
buildings.
mean, but I will explain so you can understand. The words translate to Allah is not dominion. Satan makes his intentions clear.
That's a bit of a stretch. So all I saw were buildings. Let's see how Dawa takes this here and see if it's any good here. Pay attention, pay close attention. These buildings, they look like they might be Arabic, and if you squint just the right way, oh no, it says that Islam is false. Well, I'll be honest with you, on this channel, you don't have to squint for me to tell you Islam is false. Easy peasy.
So, guys, you saw that for yourself, subhanAllah. As you can see, why would the Marvel movie, out of all movies for that matter, decide to name a planet behind the scene of this creature, whatever the hell it is, yeah? SubhanAllah, and write, Allah is not the king. Do you really think these things are coincidences? Do you think that...
Do I think that they picked a bunch of random buildings? Yes. But we will put that on hold for now, and we're going to go ahead and welcome on our first guest here. I'm going to go ahead and pull him on up. Welcome.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you? Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Are you atheist?
Before.
Probably, but it's been a while. I bet
I'm
you.
a Christian.
Ah, okay. Sorry, there has been quite a few things going on. Well, welcome. So, what do you want to talk about? I mean, we could talk about the video Dawa has here. I think it's so far pretty stupid. I mean, it's a real big stretch there, or pick a topic you would like to prefer.
So do you remember I said I had a channel, it was about gaming, and I changed the theme of my channel?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I changed the theme. It's now apologetics and polemics channel.
Apologetics, polemics. Okay, cool. Cool. So what would be your main focus on there?
I made one video. Are you streaming this on your phone?
No, this is just a computer.
Okay.
YouTube likes this new vertical format here. This looks better. New vertical format. and they push it. So I figured, for the open Q&As, I might as well go ahead and do this here.
So I made a video on that Allah is the biggest Zionist ever, according to the Quran.
According to the definitions that Dawa use, yes. It's very clear in the Quran that Israel is supposed to, the Jews are supposed to hold Israel. That's where they're supposed to be. So my wife still hates this vertical format. Yes, but it seems to be popular. So
it looks like you're streaming from a phone, if I'm being honest.
Nope, my phone's right here.
No, but it said it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it. I think they're trying to do sort of a TikTok thing where then they can have the vertical approach.
Yeah, they do that already on YouTube Shorts. So, like, this is my video here. If I could share it.
Go and share your screen. Take a look at it.
Sorry for promoting my own channel.
Well, it's open call-in. It's anyone can pick a topic and we can talk about it. Everyone trying to be like TikTok. Well, YouTube over the last few years have been chasing after. They'll chase after fads left and right. And yeah. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. Got your screen shared here. Okay. I don't think this is what you want to show.
No, it is. I was just on what do you call it?
Looks like OBS.
OBS, yeah. Yeah.
Am also on Rumble as well. Not much traction there to speak of.
Do you want to play my video?
I have your screen up, but I don't see a video on it. I just see the...
Yeah, this is the video.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Fire away.
Okay. First...
Can you pause for a second? So is this a live stream that you did? Is this just a video?
No.
Is this a pre-recorded video?
Recorded video.
Okay. I'll definitely clean up the beginning of it just as friendly advice. Because if I was going to decide to normally people decide to watch a video within the first couple minutes. And I'm not being pulled in yet to the video. So I just trim up the beginning as a recommendation. But go ahead and continue.
Okay. Hello, my name is Rory Saletti. Today I'm going to be showing you, according to the Quran, that Allah is the biggest Zionist according to the Quran. This video is titled, Allah is the biggest Zionist according to the Quran. Now I made some slideshows. The reason why I'm making this video is because Muslims always cry about the Palestinian suffering and the war that's going on in Gaza. The thing is, right, Allah prescribed for them, commanded them to fight until they have that land. And we're going to be going through each slide, and don't worry, I have actually referenced them, the chapters and verses. Okay, this is from Muhammad Picto's translation.
Okay, pause for a second here. We need to make a quick definition. Request for a definition of what Zionist is. That's an issue because it's not very well defined. In fact, according to Muslim debaters and Muslim on YouTube here, it is anyone that thinks that Israel has the right to defend itself and can exist. If that's a thing, then yes, you're automatically a Zionist. You support Israel in any way, shape, or form. At least that's what they claim to be true. Now, just a couple quick questions for my guest here. What are you looking at getting out of this conversation?
The fact that Muslims always complain about the war in Gaza, but Allah command. Oh, you mean between you and me, right?
Yeah, between you and me, right here, right now.
Oh,
because I'm watching this video, I'm not sure if you're looking at editing critiques, any sort of YouTube sort of advice. I don't know what you're looking for.
What do you think of the video as we go along?
So far, it's very slow. And it's something you want to avoid. And again, that's something I struggle with a lot, and my wife helps me out a lot with that. That's why I can pick it very easily.
Yeah, I do have a learning disability, mild learning disability, and I speak slowly, and the slide slow is very slow.
Well, you're not showing your face on here. So there are some ways that you can sharpen it up. You can speed it up. You can use Audacity. You can remove some of the silent spots where you're thinking. If your face is not on there, then there's no point. Like I just went and went into another sentence. I would edit that part out if I was looking at just doing a pre-release video.
Okay.
So there are things that you can use to sharpen up, and I don't expect everyone to know that, obviously. But I mean, the concept, as far as what you have to present, I think can be powerful. I think it can be a very effective video. I think presentation needs some work on it so far. The Defender says you need a better mic.
Yeah, it's my first time making it. For a long time, I haven't made videos. I have made videos in the past.
So yeah, I mean, we're not talking about needing to go out and spend, huge amount of money on anything particular. I just have like a little blue microphone here that's connected up through that. A lot of microphones, webcams will have microphones already installed on them. I would recommend a dedicated microphone of some sort. That way you can bring it in, do some audio editing to it, maybe speed it up. Because, I mean, Allah is the biggest Zionist. I mean, that's catchy. I mean, if you got someone on there that's like, what is he talking about here? What do you mean Allah is the biggest Zionist? Right? I mean, that's catchy. It's engaging. It's a good title to run with, in my opinion. So, yeah, if you're looking at that, I'd look at increasing the speed, either artificially, just reading through it multiple times. Whenever I do any sort of pre-recorded video, I am recording multiple times. The end result that you guys see here on YouTube is probably like 10, 20 times of me running through the script before I get something I actually want to use. Okay. So there's if I'm doing a pre-recorded video, that's the strength of a pre-recorded video, is you can do a lot of prep to it before you present it. I think if you cut out the beginning there, get to the meat of it, right? And you want to put a hook, right? You know, Allah is the biggest Zionist, and here's why. And then you go into the Quran and where it says it and your references. That's interesting. That's intriguing. And again, that's just built off of what you've already done here. It's just expanding a bit more on it. So, I mean, this is this is a great topic to hit.
Okay, shall we continue with the video, or do you want me to just stop it?
How long is the video itself?
Let me see. 11:23 minutes.
We'll continue a bit more here, just see if anything else pops out to me. I recommend doing that. And even if, for example, I do have, I'm trying to think of the best way of doing it. You can send me an email. My email's on my YouTube channel, and you can send it. It's just lordscrusader@gmail.com. In fact, I'll even put it in the private chat here. What you can do is, if you want to try to re-release the video, because again, I think it's such a good topic to hit. I'd really like to see you re-release it with a bit faster into it, so that people with just short attention spans don't click off before you get to the good stuff. Why don't you send me the link? Go ahead and whenever you're about ready to redo the video or
there's someone in your comment section swearing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just do that. Put them in timeout. No, you can't say no bad words. Go timeout corner. I'm a dad. I can say that. So yeah, if you want to send me, if you want to upload to YouTube, you can do it as an unlisted video. You can send me the link ahead of time. Okay. And then I can take a look at it and see what you've got there. And if you'd like, I can give you any sort of impressions I have on it. Again, my first impressions, I love the topic. I absolutely love the topic. And you've got the title down, which is by far one of the harder things. I'm bad with titles. It takes me forever to decide what title it is. I think just the pacing of the video needs to be a bit faster if it's going to be pre-released. Again, if it's a live stream like we're doing right now, who cares, right? This is live. All the good, bad, the ugly, it's all right here. So, guys, this is an open call-in, but let's go ahead and continue this video if you'd so like to. So I'd like to hear what verses you have there to present.
Okay. Okay. First Quranic verse, and I'm going to read it as it is. Even that includes the brackets. All children of Israel, remember my favor wherewith I favored you, and fulfill part of the covenant. I shall fulfill my part of the covenant, and fear me. Quran 2:40. I highlighted the children of Israel, the part where it says children of Israel, in blue, because that is the color flag of the children of Israel. Blue, blue and white. Now, next Quranic verse. All children of Israel, remember my favor when I favored you, and how I preferred you to all creatures. All children of Israel, remember my favor when I favored you, and how I preferred you to all creatures.
Okay, let's go ahead and pause right
And
there.
verily, we gave the children.
You do a lot of explanation that I don't think is necessary. You don't have to justify. It's your video. You don't have to justify anything to me as far as your format you decide to put on. So I think we'll stop there again. I'd love to see you flush this out more. I would, greatly anticipate your next video and seeing how you take it from here. But yeah, you don't have to add in, say, well, I'm reading the parentheses or anything like that. Just, again, you're dealing with people with, we all have extremely short attention spans. So just get into the meat. So Quran 9:29 says, fight those who do not believe in yada, yada, yada. Go right into that. Don't hesitate in it. Go right in it. Take the bull by the horns. Remember, this is your channel. This isn't like you got to give me any reason why you picked the colors or something like that. So, again, I'm not trying to be critical on you. I'm just...
No, I think
these are the insights I'm seeing, and I want to see you succeed. And I know that this is a very unforgiving, I would say, environment.
No, I think criticism is healthy. Because
I want you to understand where that criticism is coming from. It's not coming out of, well, you just didn't do good enough. No, it's coming out. It's cool. It's awesome. I love the concept. I want to see it reach more people. And I think if you made these tweaks, I think it will come off a lot faster to a lot more people.
Okay.
So I want to see you succeed.
All right. So did you send me your email?
Let me, actually, I got distracted by the chat. It's here. So there you go. There's my email. It's in the private chat. If you just on the side, you should see private chat. You can click on that. Yeah, just email me the unlisted video link beforehand if you want me to review it. And we can sit down. I can even set up a little meeting like this, just you and me, and we can talk it out.
Are you on Zoom or anything?
No, it'll be just on. It'll just be like this. It'll be on StreamYard, just an unlisted, not public live stream. So it'll just be you and me reviewing your next video together, and we can talk it out there.
Okay, but the thing is, Rory's not my real name. I don't want to give my real name out because I don't want to dox myself.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, that won't be an issue.
Okay.
Are you talking about the verification stuff you gotta go through?
Yeah.
When you go in to call in, yeah, that doesn't. I never see any of that information. I have no clue. It's all StreamYard that just says, do they have an active YouTube or Facebook account? Yes. Okay, great. Fantastic. So I never hear any of it. So I do have another call in here. I'm going to go ahead and pull them up for a second here, find out.
Do you want me to stop the live stream?
We'll take your video down. Hey, Luke.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Did you have a topic you want to discuss, or did you have something to add to our
topic? A topic to discuss.
Okay. Let me finish up with this caller, and then we'll go ahead and hit that next topic.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay. So just where we're going to stand here, if you want my opinion on videos that you're putting forth or topics you're putting forth, again, email me there. We can discuss it. I can give you whatever I have as far as my opinions on it. And you are free to say these are stupid opinions. I don't want to have anything to do with them. I want to do it my way. And I think this is a better way of doing it. and that's perfectly fine too. These are just opinions that I'm giving out. Easy come, easy go. So. Well, Roy, thank you very much for joining us, and I do look forward to getting that email from you.
Okay. Do you want me to send you the PowerPoint presentation?
Sure, you can. I'm not going to. I mean, you got the video on it. I want to see your video do well. I'm not going to take the topic.
Okay.
Myself. I think it's a good video. I think it's good. I think it's powerful. Definitely, if you time it right with something in the news about Israel, I think you could really hit well. I think that's the short I did that was on the basic history of Israel. I think went as well as it did because it was hit in just the right time period. So timing is also critical. And sometimes it's just, I don't know. Sometimes you just get lucky.
Okay,
So,
thank you, brother.
Thank you very much. And again, I look forward to talking to you again.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome,
Hello.
Luke.
Hi.
So what's the topic?
So the topic is Genesis 1.
This is 1-1.
Yes. So
Okay.
about like I was wondering did the early church fathers take Genesis 1 allegorical or literal?
Well, that's a good question. Again, that's personal. Now, I don't see that as being necessarily critical for one's salvation. I think Jesus Christ is Lord either way.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have a split between some that held it as literal. These are the 7 days of creation, and there are probably some that did not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know off the top of my head each individual stance on that one topic.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a big discussion on, in fact, this was huge, and I think it's interesting because we have the concept of baptism, and we have sort of a debate going on if it's, sprinkle baptism or full immersion baptism. Is one that's pretty common nowadays. Back then, first century, was living water versus dead water.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what those would be?
No.
The early church. Don't know what my wife's referring to, but the living water would be flowing water. So like rivers. Should you only baptize in rivers, or should you baptize in like ponds or other place where there's still water?
Mm-hmm.
Some told them doesn't much matter.
Yeah.
Again, it counts on what baptism actually is. It's the symbol of I am a Christian. I am following Jesus Christ as a public declaration of my faith, and I'm doing it in front of all these witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. There you go.
But I did have another topic.
Go ahead.
So there was like one time I think I was debating a Muslim, and when I was going to when I pulled up like about like how slavery in like Surah 4 verse 24, he tried to do a backstab at me and pull it up Exodus and trying to say how Old Testament law about like selling slaves and all that stuff and Exodus.
Okay. So what were the Israelites in Egypt in the book of Exodus?
They were captured under Pharaoh.
Beginning. They were enslaved.
Yeah.
The entire book is how God's taking these slaves and freeing them.
Yeah.
And the process that he goes through to establish the Israelites. And that's it. I still think that's hilarious that they go to that book as being, this is proof that Christianity supports slavery. It's like, guys, it's almost like saying, well, you see, the United States supports slavery because it got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is there something in specific? Is there something uniquely that they pointed out that you wanted to hit?
Yeah, well, I think it was either I don't know. I think it was I think it was Exodus, Leviticus, or Deuteronomy. I don't know. I don't know what the common one is, but I remember it vaguely, and but it was like
Okay.
trying to pull out
Well,
like.
Sorry, we got a hobo in the back that wants to come on and talk.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should let him.
Yeah,
What's your opinion?
Okay. Yeah, if it has anything to do with the
We'll
Quran.
let the hobo come on. Hobo,
Hey.
welcome.
Hey, I stumbled in off the streets.
Still got that glorious beard going, I see.
I do. I go back and forth whether I should chop it off or keep it on, and in the midst of the debate, it remains on.
So did you have any impressions or
Impressions of what?
thoughts on this topic?
What's the topic? It says open call-in. All are welcome.
About
Even
Exodus.
hobos.
Well, yeah, we're talking about Exodus. And...
Or I think it's either Leviticus, Exodus, or Deuteronomy. One of the verses, I forget, but it was about about how a Muslim tried to prove to me that that in the Old Testament, how it's like buying and selling slaves are like allowed at that time, and they're trying to say that now God's allowing slavery. I remember he tried to pull that up.
Well, so one thing I would say, I don't think people sufficiently reflect on issues that properly, I think, come under the general topic of slavery, such as our current penal system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are differences, but when you look in the ancient world, including what's being addressed by Moses, they didn't have penitentiaries. So when people were punished for crimes, particularly if they were economic crimes, or if they were military crimes, such as aggressing against another people, then how do you deal with these sorts of people? The Bible's answer in the ancient world really was that people who aggressed against another nation were reduced to slavery. And so it was a penal response. You know, in other words, today, if somebody committed a crime, we would incarcerate them. We would imprison them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in the ancient world, there were no penal systems, or penitentiaries. So that was one of the ways they dealt with crimes of that sort. So that's one thing. I mentioned economic crimes. If a person stole something, they were responsible for returning what they took and then making restitution. If a person couldn't make restitution, then they were reduced to slavery to pay it off. So one way to sort of think about this is to recognize this background, that it's dealing in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases with this sort of thing. People were reduced to slavery as punishment for their crimes, and we do that today by means of the penal system. Mm-hmm. So if people don't like slavery altogether, and again, I mean, I recognize there are differences between slavery proper and somebody being in prison, but the idea of somebody being restrained and under somebody else's yoke is common to them, right? Mm. So, I mean, somebody would have to just then say we have to do away with all penal systems. I mean, how do they suggest that we deal with crime and punishment? You know, what's the solution to that? You kind of get what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Bible condemns man stealing. If you look in 1 Timothy, for example, Paul mentions this. Man stealing would be when you go and take somebody and you enslave them without right. Mm-hmm. You've kidnapped them, you've reduced them to slavery. So the Bible condemns that sort of thing, but it doesn't condemn punishing criminals. And one of the ways that criminals were punished are by what I was just talking about. So a person could become a slave either by committing some economic crime or by going to war against another group and being reduced to servitude, or if they're already, a person can acquire a slave. They could buy somebody who's a slave, but that doesn't explain how the person got into slavery, right? So I'm just talking about how there are different ways a person could acquire a slave, but the basic reason why somebody would be in slavery in the first place is because they committed some economic crime or some crime of aggression.
So yeah, there are multiple different types of slavery, primarily two that we see throughout history. We have indentured servitude and chattel slavery. Chattel slavery would be the type that we see where you have a conquering group come in and take slaves. We see Muhammad doing this a lot, where he would come in, he'd conquer, he'd take slaves, and that's the way he would then sell off. A lot of times in the Bible, what it's referring to is indentured servitude, where they have a set term limit. There are rules and regulations on how these individuals can be treated. And there's an end date saying, hey, this is the end period here. This is when it's over. So it's very different. In fact, I did a debate with Nadir on, does Islam support slavery? Which, of course, he immediately said, yes, Islam supports slavery. And it's like, wow, that was an easy debate.
Yeah. I'd be
so
surprised.
that was his opening. That was like his opening line. So Islam supports slavery. I'm like, well.
Easiest debate in your life.
That was me.
Yep.
So, yeah, but then it's a question of what type. So, Elle asked me to have you restate your question to Anthony about the early church fathers.
So my other question about the early church fathers was, does Genesis 1, did the early church fathers take Genesis 1 literally or allegorical? I've heard that.
Yeah, so the standard view, which isn't to say that it was the only view, is that the days were to be understood literally. Now, when it comes to allegorical interpretation and those who read the text allegorically, there's actually two different camps. So some who interpret allegorically do so to the disparagement of the historical or literal sense. That is, they would reject what it says literally in favor of an allegorical understanding. However, I think the better allegorical approach, I'm not advocating allegory per se, but in terms of these two options, the relative merits of them, there are those who took things allegorically but didn't reject the historical sense. Meaning that they thought that it has a historical sense. The historical sense has to be accepted, but there's more to what the text means and is teaching us than just the straightforward literal sense would reveal to us. And so they might say, for example, that God separates the waters above from the waters below to make some point about separation, say, of the righteous and the wicked. Now, some of this gets fanciful in my view, but there are those that when I read them, I think, well, even if this isn't what the text is about, they're making a good point. It's still true on the basis of other texts of Scripture. Now, one thing I would say, though, is that none of the fathers who took the text in something other than a literal way would have advocated that it's talking about billions of years. That just wasn't there. That wasn't how they approached the text. So it is the case that there were some that took. So Augustine, for example, his approach is to say that it doesn't take God 6 days to create the world. So the 6 days are to be understood differently. God creates not in time, but with time. Time is a property of creation, and God creates instantaneously. And not Augustine now, but some at least contemporary people have sort of built on at least that seminal idea.
Yeah, which is the Big Bang, right?
Well, what I was going to say is some would say that I'm just giving you the options.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating this, but some would say that the 6 days represent revelatory periods. It's over the course of 6 days that these things were being revealed to Moses. There are others who would say that what you're getting in Genesis is a kind of framework. It's poetically giving us what God did, but again, it's not to be understood literally. And they would make observations about the parity of the text. So, for example, the first 3 days talk about God forming domains, right? Heaven, earth, sea. And then the next 3 days talk about God filling them or making their inhabitants. And so when you look at days 1 through 3, you do see that 4 through 6 correspond to those days. So, God makes the heavens, and corresponding to that, on the other side, he makes the birds that fly through the heavens, right? He makes the land, he makes land creatures. So that's another way some people have approached this. But yeah, I mean, the standard view simply was that it was 6 days. That was the standard Jewish view. It was the standard view of the fathers. And when they didn't take it literally, they gave it any number of allegorical interpretations, some of which appear fanciful to me. And in the case of somebody like Augustine, he didn't like the idea of God working over the course of 6 days. That struck him as inconsistent with God's nature, right? As all powerful. But I mean, I don't, I love Augustine, but I don't agree with that line of reasoning. Just because he has the power to do it in an instant, doesn't mean that he doesn't have the power to do it over the course of 6 days. And what if there's a pedagogical purpose to this, for example? What if God, in creating in 6 days and resting on the 7th, intended to give man a pattern by which he is to labor and rest in the world, as it says in the 4th commandment? For in 6 days God created the world, and on the 7th he rested. And that's given as the reason why man is to work 6 days and rest on the 7th. So I mean, there are a lot of good studies on this out there. I'm trying to think. Some of these are ecclesiastical documents, meaning in certain denominations, this issue has come up, whether it's consistent with the confession of certain Christian communions to admit to the ministry somebody who doesn't hold a literal 6 days. And so there are these reports that were generated, at least in my own background, where they're discussing all the historical understandings of the text. I could probably find them and pass them on to Eric, and then he could put them in the description box.
Absolutely. So that answer the question?
Yeah. It's a complicated subject, because a lot of times when someone like an atheist can point out, they'll start saying, oh, this doesn't match up with today's standards, or someone could just try to say that.
Well, do remember that science is not the answer. It is the pursuit of truth.
Yeah, it is.
It has changed multiple times over not a very long period of time. It's not actually that old.
Yeah.
The way of thinking about it. Now, Anthony, you have an event coming up, don't you?
I do.
It is the R Strong Tower East Coast.
Yeah. Are you guys coming to that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool deal.
Elle and I are planning on attending, God willing.
Cool
So
deal.
It should be a fun time. So if you guys are interested, it's R Strong Tower East Coast. Let me grab the link here. Hosted by Ministry to Muslims. You guys know how much I try to emphasize conferences and how important they are. These are the sort of conferences that I started going to that really laid in how important they are. So make sure, if you guys can, go ahead and try to attend if it's at all possible. So there's the link to that ministry there. And you guys can go ahead and join us there. And I hope to see you there. So there we go. So we have a lot of fun. You got Samuel Green that's going to be speaking. Got Anthony Rogers, of course. See Dr. Eddie Dalcour's on there. I'm glad they have everything laid out so nicely for you guys here. And it's worth every moment. So is there anything you have, any insights you want to add to this? I know George had mentioning it whenever we can. I figured it was a poetic time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me see those topics there. I haven't really paid attention to what the other guys are talking about, but it's interesting. So Jay, go back up a little bit. Jay, it says, is going to be talking about hermeneutical key, bringing Muslims to Christ. I can't really guess what he might be intending by hermeneutical key. Perhaps he thinks there's some special observation to be made in presenting the text of Scripture to Muslims. I don't know.
I see I see that he's supposed to be talking on that. I don't see him on the list of, at least not on the banner there.
Who?
Jay Smith.
Oh yeah. Actually, he might be, if you scroll down in the bios, maybe it'll say that he's coming, or he's going to be
online only.
Online.
Yeah, he's going to be online only. I think last year he was in person, but I wasn't able to attend last year.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it does say that above him and Tony Costa. And that makes sense because I know he's supposed to be somewhere else around that time. So that explains that. So who else here? Let's see. What am I talking about?
You probably know.
Yeah, I usually try and find these things out at least right before I speak.
Smith.
So let's see. Then Introduction to Islam by Laura Powell. Laura Powell is great. She spent a lot of time with Muslims, especially with Muslim women, and she has a lot of good insights. So it looks like he has me down here talking about the fact of the crucifixion. I don't actually remember discussing that with him. So part of the reason I don't always remember what I'm talking about is because there are numerous events and I don't always keep straight which event I'm addressing, which topic. But I can imagine why this might have come up. I probably will be looking at the various interpretations among Muslims on Jesus' crucifixion. So you're aware, of course, Surah 4157 is routinely taken to be a denial that the crucifixion actually occurred. But that's not the only view held by Muslims. There are a variety of interpretations, actually. So I imagine that was the original idea behind that. And so that's my best guess there.
Yeah, but that's pretty vague. I mean, you could do the historical evidence. You could do the, how it impacted the culture around it, the writings outside of Christian doctrine and documentation. So the pagan documentation of the event itself. There's a lot of ways you can take that.
Yeah, but I assume since it's a conference directed towards Muslims, I mean, everything you said actually, though, is is relevant to that. But a lot of what I would be interested in conveying is how the Quran is not clear, because I like to make the additional observation that not only is it not necessary to deny the crucifixion on the basis of that verse, which is, Muslims just ride roughshod over the historical evidence and the biblical witness because this verse allegedly gives them warrant from Allah for dismissing all the apparent evidence. I remember years ago, there was a Muslim by the name of Sami Zaatari. I think he currently lives in the United Arab Emirates, but he used to be an apologist. He was with the Muslim Debate Initiative, did a lot of debating. These guys never last. It's the story of Islamic apologists. There's only a handful that are still around from the old days, like Shabir Ali and Nadir Ahmed. The reason Nadir is still around is because he doesn't know how badly he's been refuted, and so he just keeps hucking his wares. Shabir Ali, that's his shtick, right? What do? It's like if you were a car repairman your whole life and it turns out that you're not very good at it, well, you still have to play the game because that's your only option, right? You got to make a living. So Shabir's still doing some debates because that's what garners him some attention. But Sami Zaatari, I think it was in a debate with James White. It could have been James or David. I don't recall exactly. Both of them have debated him, but they were debating the crucifixion, and Sami Zaatari, and I always thought this too, so it's not that I disagree with him here. I have other problems with it, but he said one of the things that's always bothered him about debates between Muslims and Christians over the crucifixion is that the way this is presented as though all the evidence is on the side of Christianity, and then the Muslim is sort of on his back heels and has to try and defend against this onslaught, when he says that actually everything that is presented by Christians as evidence for the crucifixion is just what a Muslim should expect it to be, given that Allah, according to the Quran, made it appear as if Jesus was crucified. Well, then of course all the evidence should point to the crucifixion, right? So Sami Zaatari reflects, I think, what's really going on with Muslims, even if they don't argue as pointedly as he does, that we can just dismiss all the evidence because Allah said it was all an illusion.
Well, then they're left with an issue, because then they're left with Allah creating through his own masterful plan Christianity and creating a rival for himself in that.
Yeah, and it creates a larger epistemological problem than just Christianity's origins and that sort of thing. How do we know anything if this is how Allah operates? And his deception was not only of the Jews, but the Christians, who were allegedly his people at the time, right? It's the apostles that were purveying this message and the early Christians who had adopted it. And so they end up being swept up in this deception. So Allah's in the game of deceiving his own people. And we don't have to merely infer that, because Allah does this to Muhammad and the early Muslims in Surah 8. Remember, the account says that Allah presented the people on the other side in the battle as few in number to them when they were really many. And he did this because otherwise they would have cowered away in fear. So Allah deceives his own people. And that being the case, how could one ever know that what they believe on the basis of evidence is actually true, right? So, but I like to get into this topic because it brings up stuff like this, but also because it strikes at the heart of the pervasive claim of the Quran that it's a clear book. Throughout, it claims to be clear and exhaustively detailed, but Surah 4:157 is far from clear. It's not obviously denying the crucifixion. It can be read and has been read in different ways, right? So, for example, is Surah 4157 denying that Jesus was crucified, or is it denying the boast of the Jews? It says, they say and boast. The pronoun they here refers back to the Jews. So it's directed at the Jews who are boasting. They said and boast, we killed Christ Jesus, the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, but they neither killed him nor crucified him. So what's being denied is their claim, their boast to have killed and crucified him. But that doesn't also entail that the Romans didn't crucify him. And one could also say that it's simply denying, even if you want to include the Romans here, which it doesn't, and say that it's denying that anybody was ultimately responsible for killing Jesus.
Real quick here, which verse are you referring to? I'm going to throw up on the screen.
Surah 4157. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you guys.
Yeah.
You're
Elsewhere in the Quran, Allah says, allegedly, through, or Muhammad's attributing this to Allah, he says, not to say that those who died were slain by the enemies, right? Because ultimately it's not them who slay, but Allah who slays. So when it denies that the pagans slayed the Muslims, what it's denying is not their instrumentality in their death, but the ultimate agency of Allah in bringing it about. They couldn't have done it if Allah himself didn't will it. And so maybe that's all the author of the Quran is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so many Muslims have found these sorts of interpretations more satisfying. After all, I mean, it would be strange if the Quran only makes this statement in one place. Another thing that's passing strange is when the Christians from Najran confront Muhammad, why don't they raise this as an issue? Right? Why don't they ask him a series of questions? Hey, look, your revelations say that Jesus is not the Son of God. Well, then why, or who is his father, they say, right? So they're asking Muhammad questions about the Quranic revelation that contradict the Bible. They ask how Jesus could have performed miracles if he was only a man. They ask how he brought clay birds to life. He gives life. How does somebody who's not divine give life? If Muhammad would have answered, well, Allah gave him the power to do this, which the Quran doesn't say. It does say he did it by Allah's leave, but that's a distinct issue, right? I use this analogy all the time. I can give my son permission or leave to go out until 10 o'clock. I'm not giving him the power to do it. He has the power to do it in himself. I'm simply, as his father, giving him permission. Well, according to the Quran, part of the problem with the pagans is that they associated others with Allah. They didn't think they were greater than Allah or equal to Allah. They recognized that Allah was the chief deity in their system. And so it was from Allah that they had any authority or power. It was by his leave that they did anything. But Muhammad rejected all this as paganism, right? So to attribute to other gods the power of intercession, the power of giving life, these sorts of things, was to associate them with Allah in his attributes or in his works. And this was shirk. So that's not a viable option for Muslims. They can't say that Jesus gave life to clay birds simply by Allah's permission, because that would just make him the same sort of thing as the pagan deities that Muhammad was rejecting. And that would be shirk. But point being that the Christians in Najran asked a bunch of questions. Why wouldn't they ask this question? This would be one of the most obvious questions to ask. They never ask it. But again, why would Muhammad only mention this once? Why is there no discussion of this elsewhere in the hadith or in the tafsirs? Never seems to be raised as a problem. And then there are other statements in the Quran that talk about Jesus dying. There are this is obscured by translations where it says that they use a euphemism, right?
Which is, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think what you're referring to is in Surah Al-Maryam 19. Jesus allegedly speaks and saying, I will be killed. In the Arabic, it says that I will the day I die. Yeah, especially in the Arabic, it says that he died and will be raised back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
my
that's
point.
I was immediately going to that because that brings it in perfect line with the different way of interpreting where it's Allah is killing Jesus. They thought they were killing Jesus, but it's only by my permission that Jesus died, and that would be in line with this here, where the common claim that Jesus was just raised to Allah, not really dying, just raised to Allah, would contradict this very clearly.
It says that especially in the Arabic. The English does not say it. The Arabic says itself. I think it's I will be raised to myself.
The euphemism they use is "I'll take you," right? But I'll take you to myself, or something like that. And the issue is that word is used to talk about taking people in death. That's the point. It is an idiom, but it's an idiom that means death, right? It'd be like our saying somebody passed away. You know, when we say that, we don't mean that they went by our house, right? They drove by and waved. That's not what we mean. Nobody takes it that way, even though literally it's passed away. That's the language. The import of that is died. And so I will take you is a way of saying that Jesus would die. Now, here's an interesting thing about this too. So in Surah 3, one of the places where it says this is verse 55. Notice what it says in verse 54. It says, the disbelievers made a plan, but Allah also planned, and Allah is the best of planners. Now, we know that's the Arabic word makr, right, which means deceiver. So it's saying that the unbelievers were scheming deceitfully, plotting against Jesus, and Allah was doing the same against them. And then this is what it says immediately after that. This is the context of this. Remember when Allah said, "Oh, Jesus, I will take you and raise you up to myself," or literally, "Oh, Jesus, I will cause you to die and raise you up to myself, and I will deliver you from those who disbelieve and elevate your followers above the disbelievers until the day of judgment." Notice how verse 55 looks very much like it's talking about the same thing in view in 4:157 and 58. In 4:157 and 58, it talks about what happens to Jesus and then how Jesus is raised up to Allah. So Allah there is saying that something was made to appear to them, right? Well, here in Surah 354, it talks about Allah deceiving those who tried to deceive and take away the life of Jesus. And Allah's response to this is that he would take Jesus in death, according to literal Arabic, and raise him to himself. So that perfectly works together with this interpretation of Surah 4:157 that says Allah's denying that the Jews were the ones who ultimately killed Jesus. It was Allah who did it. He made it appear to them like they did, but they didn't. He did it, and then he took Jesus to himself. So again, coming back to this other point, which is the issue of the Quran's clarity, notice what this does. The Quran claims to be a clear book, but if it's susceptible to these different interpretations, that looks problematic. And it's not just that it's susceptible. Like, I mean, I know people can misinterpret anything, but that doesn't mean that everything is unclear, right? People of distorted minds can make things mean things contrary to what they obviously mean. In this case, though, there is really legitimate room for argument. And it's not just Christians that are putting forward a diversity of interpretations. These are representative of Islamic interpretations, right? The Ahmadiyya interpreted a certain way. Shabir Ali adopts their interpretation. He says that what it's saying is they didn't, when it says they didn't kill or crucify him, crucify is being understood in the sense of kill by means of crucifixion. But according to Shabir, Jesus was put on the cross, but it didn't eventuate in his death. And so it isn't on this use of the term crucify true that Jesus was crucified, that is, executed by crucifixion, because he survived. And so that's what the Quran is denying, that Jesus died by crucifixion. but he was crucified, put on a cross, and subsequently he regained his health and presented himself to his followers. And this is the origin of the idea that he appeared to them, right? So, and then the verse, interestingly, it concludes by saying, those who differ therein have no certainty in the matter. They're all subject to doubt or conjecture. Right. So given that Muslims do differ among themselves over the interpretation of this, it shows that they're subject to doubt and confusion, the very thing the Quran is supposed to alleviate. And even the standard view that this refers to Allah deceiving people is full of all sorts of ambiguities. Muslims debate among themselves whether it was a faithful follower of Jesus offering to substitute himself in Jesus' place, or whether it was an enemy like Judas who was made to suffer in Jesus' place. So was this somebody freely offering to die for Jesus, or was this somebody that was being punished? Right. And then there's questions that arise on either one of those things. Right?
Can I butt in really quick?
Yeah.
So about what you were saying, one of the also common arguments that was also brought up is a Gnostic gospel called the Gospel of Thomas, where they try to also argue about how Thomas took the place of Jesus on the cross as well. They also make that one as well.
Yeah. So notice what this does, though. It introduces substitution into the Quran. One person dying in place of another. So Jesus was sentenced to death by them, but Thomas, at God's behest, substitutes himself for Jesus. So apparently Allah is not averse to substitution. But no Muslim can be comfortable with that, right? Their big problem against the crucifixion is not even really the fact of it. It's the interpretation of it that we hold to, which is that it was a substitutionary death, right? So, I mean, some will argue against the crucifixion because allegedly it's beneath what we could expect God to allow such a great prophet like Jesus to endure. Although that doesn't work. The Islamic sources are full of righteous people that suffer. But some Muslims argue that, right? Jesus couldn't have died this kind of ignoble death because he was one of Allah's greatest messengers. I mean, look at Muhammad. You know, he's over there suffering, thinking that he's dying because of the result of the poison that he ate at
My aorta.
Yeah.
Aorta is being severed. Oh no.
Yeah.
Exactly how I predicted.
Yeah. And then if you take the Judas option, that Judas is being put in place of Jesus, well, you know, problems arise there too. I mean, now you've got a wicked person dying in place of Jesus. According to the Quran, when it denies that one person can bear the burdens of another, what it says is no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another.
Now that's interesting. Because according to the Quran, Jesus doesn't have burdens.
Right.
As sin.
So why deny that he died at all? He's the one person who could do the very thing that the Quran says nobody else can do.
Now, there is substitutional atonement. We did cover this in a live stream beforehand in the Hadith. Most specifically, those who have sins as heavy as a mountain.
Which contradicts the Quran.
Which contradicts the Quran, because these are just random Christians. These are random people. Christianity says God himself saw that humanity would not be able to pay the penalty, decided to take the penalty upon himself. That's why he took on human form and entered into creation and paid the penalty himself. That's a very simplified term way of thinking about it, but that is the basic message of the cross, that Jesus, being God, paid the penalty for our sins. Where in Islam you have random Christians and Jews being given sins, and they're the ones going to hellfire. Specifically is your ransom from hellfire,
Wait,
in
but I
several-
yeah, but that just it like to add on to what you said. I just don't understand though. How come from there he's protecting them to the day of judgment and saying, "Oh, okay, even though you guys are pagans, I'm going to protect you guys till the day of judgment." Why? That like to add on to like it just doesn't make sense. Why are you now casting them to hell and to bear each other's burdens when they're pagans? And but yet again, they're supposed to be the followers of Isa. That
what they it's not that they're being sent to hell for their own sins or even each other's sins. It's specifically for the Muslim sins, even if they have as heavy as sins as heavy as a mountain. It's going to be put upon the Christian and Jews, and they are going to be the ransom from hellfire.
doesn't it also say though in the Quran that the Muslims will also go to the hellfire to fight their way out?
But it's standard among Muslims to think of virtually everyone going to hell, except for martyrs, for example, who get a straight shot to paradise. But the Muslims won't remain there. The Muslims will eventually be released. You have the hadith where Muhammad is interceding and bringing out all of his nation from hell until the last one comes out. And so but the idea would be that those Muslims who get out that didn't sufficiently pay would do so because other people are taking their burden, right? I imagine that's how they would try and systematize this, right? So every Muslim goes to hell, excepting the jihadis, and they stay there a certain amount of time, and depending on how great their sin is, those who don't work off the amount of debt they've incurred will be replaced by Jews and Christians.
Yeah, so here's this right here is substitutionary atonement here by grabbing random Christians and Jews, and there are multiple of these hadith that are out there.
Notice that it's in this case the substitution is not voluntary. So in the case of Christ, you have a voluntary victim. It's not that Jesus is, thrown on the cross against his will. He willingly goes to the cross.
That's forcing.
Secondly, these are not sinless victims that are being sacrificed. So Allah's accepting. I mean, this is just contrary to the Bible from beginning to end, because in the sacrificial system, which is typological of what God was going to do in Christ, right? The sacrifices of the law were not an end in themselves. They didn't actually save, but they did point to, they were illustrative of the way of salvation through Christ. Jesus comes and he says, in the volume of the book, it is written of me, sacrifice and offering you didn't desire, a body you prepared for me. So he's saying those sacrifices were not ultimately what you desired. It is me offering myself as a spotless victim to you that you desire. So, but the law illustrates this by demanding that the sacrifices that are brought be without blemish, right? The whole point of them being without blemish is to show the necessity of the true sacrifice being without sin, without imperfection. But here's Allah in the Quran imposing judgment for other people's sins on these people against their will, and they're sinners. So he's accepting flawed sacrificial victims. Allah should have read Moses before he gave the Quran.
There's a guy in the chat named Benzino that's trying to say, oh, you guys are stop spreading lies about Islam. That's what he said.
That's what I was just commenting to him, inviting him to join us.
I don't know why you're trying to make a comeback, Benzino. Eminem crushed you decades ago.
On what, 8 Mile? On 8 Mile? Or?
Benzino, I'm giving away my background here. I wasn't always a Christian. But Benzino was one of the principal guys behind the Source magazine, which was like a Bible to people in the hip hop scene. It would review records, and people would look at the magazine and kind of determine whether they were going to get this record based on their review of it. And Benzino once gave Eminem less than a sterling review, and so Eminem wrote a bunch of diss songs to him, and eventually Benzino just became this
The part of the joke.
Yeah, washed up, no name that disappeared for a long time until recently, because
Then he started smack talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Benzino,
And then
you're in the chat.
Oh, it says
yelling?
Benzo.
Enzo, come join. Come join us right now. If you think you can refute what we're saying or the references that we're showing, you are more than welcome to come up. This is open to everyone. If you've seen any of the live streams beforehand, I'll normally let you state your case at the beginning, and then we can talk about it. Okay.
To add to what you said earlier about how the Quran is a clear verse that explains everything, is Surah 17 verse 1 says, "Glory be to the one who took his servant," would they put Muhammad, doesn't say that, just as his servant, by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque, where surrounding we have blessed, so that we may show him some of our signs. Indeed, he is all known, he is the all hearing, all seeing. Well, if that verse is supposed to be interpreted and it's supposed to be this is a book that explains everything, which furthest mosque, what's the farthest mosque? And if you guys say Jerusalem, there was no third temple in the 6th century.
Yeah, and there's a hadith that talks about Muhammad tying that winged beast to a ring of the temple. So, because I've heard Muslims say that it's not saying there was a temple there; it's just talking about the location, right? So he goes to where the temple was, and he leads people in prayer and all that. But the hadith fleshes this out and does in fact state that there was a temple there.
Okay, hold on just a second here. So you're saying you're not a scholar. I need to go talk to an actual scholar. But just prior to this, earlier, you said that you are the one that will, confront our false information, right? So which are you here? Because I'm getting mixed messages.
Double standard.
I'm getting mixed messages because you said beforehand you can combat this false information, and as soon as you're invited, you say, "Well, you need to go talk to the Alice."
Wait, he's trying to refute you right now. He's trying to answer you now.
No, but notice the incongruity too, though. So part of the point that I was making, and that you guys have reiterated, is that the Quran is not a clear book. So we're pointing to texts that say certain things, and he's disagreeing with our interpretation. If the Quran's a clear book, why would it take a scholar to come on here and defend it against our misrepresentations? Couldn't he come on and defend this clear Quran? The very fact that he has to have recourse to a quote-unquote scholar, I think, gives the lie to the claim that the Quran is this immaculately clear book. It's a confused book, and you're confused by your book. That's why you're dependent on your scholars.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many things definitely in Islam that's all contradictory. You got to be a scholar just to see all the contradictions alone, because you have sections in the Hadith that are that Muhammad's commanding people to pray to him, not to Allah, to him, a man. We all agree that Muhammad was a man, so there's a bit of an issue there. Or of course, Muslims like to point out that since they believe that Jesus was just a man, that since we pray to Jesus, we're just praying to a man. But there are hadith that specifically command you to pray to Muhammad as instead of God. You have hadith that talk about Christians and Jews paying for the sins of Muslims, being their substitutionary atonement, their ransom from hellfire. Yet And that's an issue that Muslims claim that Christians have, but we find that again in your sources. So yeah, there's a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, so and also Benzo keeps on trying to refute you in the chat, trying to now going off topic and trying to say, trying to say now he said, oh, I'm not going to answer. Then he starts trying to answer our questions and starting to ask questions, like saying, so if Jesus died for your sins means if you sin, I can't say that word or you're going to get taken off, but R worded, kill and still go to heaven, make no sense. And then he's trying to refute you in the chat. He's trying to refute.
As an aside, so I'm not up on some of this. Is it the case that if you use that word, I mean, I hear people all the
I've
time.
used it.
Huh?
I've used it in my videos because it's what it is. And definitely when I'm reading sources and it says it, I'm like, I have to. I'm not going to censor the sources. I'm already have Muslims over here yelling at me at being they're selectively editing the hadith or just fabricating hadith out of thin air as if I have enough time to even waste doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was wondering because I do hear people on videos slightly altering words. So at times I've been thrown off. I'm thinking I don't understand what this person's saying, and then I realize if you just tweak the word a little bit, it makes sense. So they're using, different.
Like substitution.
Words.
Substitution, just like the topic that we were talking. But a lot of times they use like words like corn in order to try to get past censors. Because the reason I was saying something like that is because a lot of times people they have to say words a bit differently to abide by YouTube's guidelines. So that's why I thought that word might get censored or something.
I know on TikTok it does.
Here's
on YouTube, I have not had an issue with it.
Here's a question that I have for Benzo. Does Islam have any hope to offer prisoners? And here's why I'm asking the question, Benzo, just so you have a clear sight of what I'm driving at. People who are in prison are people who have killed, people who have stolen, people who have raped, right? So does Islam have any hope to offer prisoners? Now, I know that there are Muslim clerics that go into prisons. It's not as common as Christians doing that, but apparently by their actions, they think that it's possible for these people to be forgiven. So apparently Islam does at least believe that it's possible for people who have done these things to be forgiven. I'm just bringing this up. I think it's obvious because I don't really understand how this is supposed to be an objection against Christianity. You think these people can be forgiven. We think they can be forgiven. The difference here is that we actually have a basis for that. We have a basis for that in the sacrifice of Christ. You guys just think that Allah arbitrarily forgives sins willy-nilly. That is, he compromises his justice and extends mercy to people at the expense of his justice. We think God was both just and merciful because he satisfied his justice in the crucifixion of Christ, and he's merciful to us because of him.
Okay, we do have a caller here.
One more thing to add on to, but Benzo said the last thing he said before he hasn't been responding in the chat is the Quran is a clear book. Repent before it is too late. Wow. Wasn't listening to anything we said.
Nope. So welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Sounds good to me.
Nice. How's it going?
Good.
Sorry for the bad quality in the camera.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, Luke doesn't even have his camera on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh?
I said Luke doesn't even have his camera on, so
you might as well just throw a picture of like Luke Skywalker on there. Might as well, since it's May the 4th, anyways. It's May the 4th. Anyways.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's May the 5th, my way.
Oh.
5th, yeah.
See? Too late. So, what do you want to talk about?
Just thought I'd join in the chat. I got nothing really good to say.
Sure. So, yeah, it's just laid back discussion. I was hoping he's going to join. So disappointing.
Let's
I
get
don't even know who I
Yusuf
am.
Ali. Let's get Yusuf Ali in there. Let's get Yusuf Ali.
I don't know. I still got to finish the Avengers insult Allah video.
I actually
From
do have
earlier.
I have another topic
It's
I
weird.
would I'd love to start. If we could go on this topic. I was wondering, and I think if we could all say something about this, but like a question I really had was like, why do the Orthodox Jews stick to the Talmud and not follow the Torah and lie about the text by the rabbis?
I think Anthony's probably the most qualified out of us. I have not dove into that.
So
myself.
there's actually been a lot of this is important actually for our interactions with Muslims, because just for the benefit of people that are trying to see some relevance of that to Islam. Although I don't know if the show it's not limited to Islam anyways, but so maybe it's not per se apparently off topic, but Muslims will often point to Jews, right? And they'll say Christianity is false because Jew X doesn't agree with doctrine Y, right? Jews don't believe in the Trinity. Jews don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. Jews don't believe Jesus died for our sins, that the Messiah would do that, and all that sort of thing. But Judaism isn't the same thing as the religion of the patriarchs or the prophets or the people of Israel under the Old Covenant. It's not the same thing. It is a post-Christian concoction. And this is well known by those that actually study Judaism and its development. When the temple was destroyed in AD 70, this had devastating ramifications for Jews. So the temple, which is what the whole Mosaic system centered on, and the vast majority of its laws were contingent. You couldn't perform certain things apart from the temple. That was part of the whole rationale. And I mean, the sacrifices, the priesthood, all this even was important to the ordinary life of the Jew. Without these sacrifices, other things that Jews do aren't acceptable before God. So what had to happen is the Jews, after the temple's destruction, had to have find some way of adjusting to this new state of affairs. How do we practice our religion without a temple? And one of the things that's interesting about this is they'll point to things in the Old Testament that talk about spiritual sacrifices, for example, the sacrifice of praise or of thanksgiving, not realizing that in the Old Covenant, these things are tied to the future work of redemption. That is, the Lord is saying he's going to bring about a new redemption, a better exodus, and establish a new and better covenant. And it's in terms of that, or tied to this, that the Old Covenant rituals are transformed, that they're reinterpreted and reapplied in these ways, right? So in the New Testament, Paul will say things like, offer your bodies as living sacrifices to God. He's taking this language that the Old Covenant ties to its promises of a new covenant, and it's applying these things to us who are in Christ in a spiritual way. The Jews, after the time of the temple's destruction, wanted the benefits of the new covenant while denying the new covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they'll say things like, you can substitute in the place of sacrifice repentance, substitute in the place of sacrifice thanksgiving, and these sorts of things. But again, all this revolves around the fulfillment of the Old Covenant in Christ establishing a new covenant. And so that's one thing. So the post-Christian rabbis were creating this new system to respond to what had happened, and they're also reacting against Christianity and the Judaism out of which it sprang. So, for example, the earlier Jews had no problem with a plurality within the Godhead. That was simply stock in trade. If you look at the Jewish Targums, they repeatedly speak of more than one divine person in the Godhead. So Targum Neophiti, for example, which is a Aramaic Jewish paraphrase, representative of the popular preaching or teaching of Jews in the synagogues. So in the synagogues, the reader would read the Hebrew text, and then somebody would interpret it in Aramaic. And this was done in order to make sure there was a distinction between the text and the interpretation of the text. So the one was done in Hebrew, the other was in Aramaic. And in those Aramaic interpretations, they repeatedly express their own understanding of things found in the Old Testament. So, for example, Targum Neophiti on Genesis 1:26 says, when the Hebrew text says, God said, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness, the Targum says that God said this to his word, and his spirit blessed them. I'm giving you, this is my rough paraphrase of the Aramaic paraphrase, but it includes in the us whom God is addressing the word and the spirit. So the word and the spirit were active in creating and blessing Adam and Eve. When you look at the Talmud, there's no mention of God's word in this way. The whole concept of God's memra as a co-agent with God in creation, or of the spirit being active in this way, is absent entirely. So the Talmud is reacting against what was a thoroughly Jewish notion, not in the first place a Christian innovation. Right? When John said in Genesis 1 or in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, that wouldn't have been earth-shattering to a Jew. He's echoing Genesis in the beginning, and then he speaks of the memra. But all the Targums speak of the memra. The memra is the Aramaic expression for word, and logos is the Greek phrase that's used for that in Greek. So if you look at all the Targums, throughout the Targums, it's the word who's doing the creating, right? Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, Targum Onkelos, Targum Neophiti, the fragmentary Targum, they all attribute the creative activity to the memra, to whom God is speaking throughout the context. Not just at Genesis 1:26, God is speaking all the way back in verse 3, right? God said, who's God speaking to? Right? Well, the Jews, the ancient Jews, said it was God's memra and his spirit. And so, again, the Talmud is reacting against this. And this is true along many different lines. They're reacting against all sorts of things, not only that Christians believe, but that earlier Jews believe. And not to drone on here, I'll just make one little additional point, but, well, a couple points. But one is that when you look in the Talmud, when it's addressing the idea of more than one person in the Godhead, it not only attributes this notion to those it calls menim, which is often understood to mean heretic, but there's debate over the meaning of the word. But whenever it addresses the menim who hold to a plurality of persons in the Godhead, and it even includes among those who held this error, at least at one time, Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Akiva was one of the foremost rabbis of the ancient period. So Rabbi Akiva is presented as holding this view at one time and of eventually being disabused of it. He's eventually scolded and chastised and rebuked and so forth, and then he sees the light, as it were. But the whole point that I'm making is that this was not exclusive to Christians or Gnostics or whatever other group you want to talk about. It was even held by some Talmudic rabbis before their correction. So this shows you the agenda of the Talmud and the fact that they're reacting against what was acceptable and accepted by earlier Jews. The other thing is that it's not just the Talmud that Jews go by today, because there are many things in the Talmud that Jews don't believe. They filter the Talmud and other rabbinic writings through people like Rashi, a medieval rabbi, and Maimonides. These two figures are towering figures in rabbinic circles. But Maimonides was not at all comfortable with certain things found in the Talmud. And there are numerous works on this. There's a Jewish guy named Mark Shapiro. I'm trying to think the name of the book, but it's all about how Maimonides in the medieval period changed Jewish belief, and how Jews today that follow Maimonides, which is many of them, how they're not actually following the Talmud. So for example, Maimonides absolutely abominated the idea that God could enter into his creation. Now, Maimonides lived in Islamic Spain, a context in which this notion was abominated, right? The Muslims didn't believe that God could enter creation. So Maimonides following suit, not to say that Maimonides was altogether favorable to Islam. Muslims sometimes claim that he was, but Maimonides actually called Muhammad, it's actually kind of funny, there's a play on words. Trying to think of the word, but oh yeah, so Muhammad is called Rasul, right? Rasul Allah, so he's called Allah's messenger. But Maimonides called him Pazul, which means flawed or imperfect one. He also called him a madman, and so forth. But this is usually sanitized in translations of Maimonides. But anyways, Maimonides abominated the idea that God could enter creation. But if you read the Talmud, that's not found there at all. The Talmud speaks so often of God in anthropomorphic ways, you get the impression it would be easier to argue from the Talmud that they envisioned God as an embodied being than that you could get the idea that, you know, Allah or God couldn't enter into creation.
Okay.
Right? I don't
real
think
quick.
Yeah.
Here. Mouse, would you like to introduce yourself? We never did that.
Oh, sorry, Mouse.
Well, no, I'm totally out of my element here. I'm just listening. I can't even keep up, to be honest. I was reading the chat, and there's a crazy guy. What's this guy's name? This troll, Benzo. He said Jesus didn't speak Greek. Well, that's just BS.
Yeah.
It's BS.
Now, we got a couple of questions specifically for you, actually, from the chat here. I'm trying to make sure.
Could I add
saw-
one thing
I
to
saw.
say back to Anthony really quick?
Sure, go ahead.
So to add on to what Anthony said, so wouldn't that mean, according to the Old Testament, that they are technically breaking the law of the, because you have to sacrifice, you have to get a lamb and you have to sacrifice it in order to cleanse the sins. But if you don't do that, then wouldn't you technically be denying God's law? Because now you're technically no longer following God. You're now adapting. If Jesus isn't the Messiah, then I guess now you're making your own religion, because that's not what God said.
Yeah, and this is where, like I said, they want the benefits of the new covenant while denying the new covenant. See, if they accepted that Christ established a new covenant anticipated in the Old Testament, then they would have a basis for spiritualizing those ceremonies and applying them now to the conduct of believers rather than to the ceremonial ordinances, right? But they don't have the new covenant, and so they're obligated to observe Mosaic law. You know, they don't have a just ground for avoiding Mosaic prescriptions, and so, and that's why I think it's a huge apologetic argument that Christians need to employ more often, that they have no temple. I mean, think about it. The temple was central to their religion. We claim it was pointing to Jesus, and when Jesus came, it no longer served its purpose. The reality has come. So it makes sense in light of this, for the temple to be not only obsolete, but gone. So the Jew has to account for why there's been no temple over there, given that it's necessary to their religion. Secondly, when you look at the Old Testament, when the temple was destroyed the first time, the people were told by the prophets why it was going to be destroyed and how long the desolation would last. They needed to be told why it was going to happen so they could repent of it, and how long the desolation would last so that they would have, the impetus to rebuild. But the question then arises, what is the sin that led to the destruction of the second temple? And where is the prophetic announcement telling us the time frame within which the desolation will last and when it will come to an end? There's nothing about that. Now, another interesting thing real quickly is in the Talmud, it mentions several things that portended the temple's destruction. 40 years before the temple was destroyed, several ominous things happened, it says. Now, this is their accounting, not ours. So, whatever somebody thinks about these things, whether they think they're fanciful or whatever, it's irrelevant. This is what the Talmud says. So this is something that they have to deal with. The Talmud says 40 years before the temple's destruction, they couldn't keep the light going in the menorah. It just always went out. The lot that was cast for the two goats, their lot was cast to determine which goat would be sacrificed for the Lord. And it says that the sacrifice for the Lord never came up the lot never came up in the right hand. And then it says the scarlet cord that would hang in the Holy of Holies that used to turn white, signifying that the sacrifice had been accepted on the Day of Atonement, no longer turned white. These are among the things that began to occur 40 years before the temple's destruction. Other things are reported as well, like the lintel of the temple was cracked. 40 years before the temple's destruction, there was a great earthquake that cracked the lintel of the temple. And it says in the Talmud that for that reason, the Sanhedrin no longer met in the chamber of hewn stone in the temple precincts because the structure was deemed unsafe. So, I mean, put all this together. What happened 40 years before the temple's destruction? What happened? The temple was destroyed in AD 70. 40 years before the temple's destruction coincides with the crucifixion of Christ, during which there was a great earthquake, during which the veil of the temple was torn, right? So it's striking that the Talmud traces this back 40 years before its destruction. And that would mean that the last official judgment of the Sanhedrin in its official area in the temple would have coincided with the judgment put upon Christ. And so I have a suggestion for Jews what that sin might have been that led to the temple's destruction, and therefore what they need to repent of. Peter actually preached a sermon on this. He told them that you, through the hands of lawless men, put him to death. Repent, therefore, right? Peter tells them, repent, turn to God, because, Peter's not bringing this up to say that Jews are irreparably lost. Peter's not making some anti-Semitic diatribe here. His whole point is, you killed the author of life, and this is the very means that God had appointed for your salvation. So repent, turn to him, and be saved.
To add one little thing to what you said about like how there's no temple. Now they're trying to build a third temple now, and now they're trying to do sacrifices, trying to bring the Mashiach.
Keep
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah, we'll see
Maybe-
how that works out.
Yeah.
You know, there have been several attempts in history, and they've all come to naught. So under Julian the Apostate, the emperor who apostatized,
Pagan emperor, yeah.
yeah, after Constantine, you know, there were many other emperors. The Christian religion had been made the official religion of the empire, but Julian came along and wanted to overturn this. And one of the ways he thought he could do this, because the early Christians used this as an apologetic. They pointed to the temple's destruction as proof that Jesus fulfilled its symbolism. And so Julian wanted to take that argument away from Christians. And so he actually supported the Jews in going back to Israel and rebuilding the temple. Now, here's another account where people can take this for however they want, but this is not a Christian account, right? So according to the account, when the Jews were trying to lay the foundation for the temple, in the process of digging up the ground and so forth, they had somehow ignited subterranean vaults, and fire was shooting up from the ground and consuming people. Again, I mean, I'm just pointing out what's in the record. So this whole effort came to naught. You know, the might of the Roman Empire was behind it in the person of the emperor, and yet they weren't able to successfully build another temple. And this sort of thing has happened repeatedly throughout history. Mm-hmm. In my view, in God's providence, this is one of the reasons why Muslims are over there in the Middle East. They're an obstruction, you know, as much as they are of the devil. You know, the devil's God's devil, right? Meaning he's subject to God's sovereignty. He can't do anything contrary to God's plan and purpose in the world. And so even when he thinks he's working against the Lord is able to use him to accomplish his holy ends. And you know, the devil has used Islam to wreak havoc, but God has also used Islam to, you know, sort of like Isaiah 10, where it says God uses the Assyrians to punish Israel, right? He refers to the Assyrians as the rod of his anger. So the Assyrians were God's rod of chastisement that he used against his wayward people. Well, Islam is a pagan nation just like the Assyrians, and they've been a thorn in Israel's side, and they've been an obstacle to them creating a third temple. I don't think that's accidental. I think there's providential activity at work there.
Yeah.
And Eric agrees.
Absolutely. Hook, line, and sinker. No, I think that when they do try to do this again, and yes, they, like Anthony's pointed out, this has already been tried before. It did not work out very well. I think it's going to end up in the same sort of just destruction.
So they're physically building a temple?
Yes, currently, right now, in Israel.
They want to.
They want to.
And
I've not heard of them actually.
What's it going to actually achieve, though? It's just going to be a temple. Like,
they're also trying to sacrifice red heifers as well.
But what's going to happen? They have
They think it's going to bring the Mashiach, because they're still waiting for the Mashiach, the Messiah.
They're still waiting for the Messiah.
Let them do it, and they'll be proven wrong.
I don't think they're going to get that far.
Well, even if they do build the temple, my guess is probably God's gonna just destroy it once again. I mean, just like he's did multiple times. I feel like he's just gonna do it again, and then the Jews are gonna be disappointed.
No, like I said,
do you think that's going to be like an earthquake, or do you think that would be through some nation, like some Muslim nation?
It just depends. We don't 100% know. We're not God what he's gonna do, but I'm not sure what he's gonna do.
So if Iran like nuked Israel, is that God's justice, or is that Satan?
I think we honestly can't tell, but I would say, I mean, the way that Israel responded, and that quickly about sending it back, I'm not sure how to feel about it.
My response is we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
There is no clear prediction one way or the other. There is no insight. Now, I do have a couple questions from my wife.
I saw your
Mouse, have you ever done any sort of musical beats?
I think
Like
I've
musical
got no
beats.
musical skill myself, but I've used AI to make music, yes. So yeah, I used a program in my movie making thing. What's it called? Wondershare.
Mhm.
And yeah, you can like generate music now. You can actually make like Christian songs now, super easy. It's kind of sick. But no, I myself have what do you call it? Tone deaf. I'm tone deaf, so I sound like terrible when I try to sing. So yeah, I make joke songs.
I have a suggestion. Can you make a joke song about the life of Muhammad?
That's already a joke.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to do much.
See,
put some
yeah,
music, you're good.
it couldn't go mainstream because you'd be hunted down forever, wouldn't you? But
Yeah, by the jihadis. Yeah, by the jihadis.
by the jihadis. I don't know what's the safest place to do that kind of content. If it's America, it's definitely not the UK, and I don't think it's Australia.
I can speak that America's still pretty open about
I think because you got what do you
Different
call it,
things.
Third Amendment.
the First Amendment.
Well,
So-
They are
Third
cracking
Amendment.
where I'm from. Where I'm from in Canada, they are kind of cracking down on Christians right now. They're trying to make a law right now passed where it's like
They're trying to make
Christians-
Allah right now.
they're trying to make a law.
Muhammad already made Allah.
No, it's a
Allah's
law.
made up.
Yeah, agreed. But like they're trying to make a law right now where it's like banning
Crazy
Christians from speaking
Yeah.
against the LGBTQ, and you'll go to jail for it.
And where?
In Canada. I'm from
Canada?
Canada.
Not surprised. I've seen some of the laws that they
Well, they're
passed
copying the UK, aren't
recently.
they? Because they get
How
lots
much?
of French Muslims, don't you? Coming in.
No, we get. I'd say there's a big Muslim population in Canada. I've seen it.
Oh yeah, Toronto.
yeah, is that because
yeah.
France has
Other
lots
places.
of Muslims?
No, I'd yeah, probably, but also I'd say about like people just coming over here, you know, because like about saying, oh, it's a country and it's a free country, you know. I think kind of when Muslims say, oh, what's the law called that the Muslims love?
You mean Sharia?
Sharia?
Yeah, they love
You mean
Sharia law.
Islamic law? It literally
Yes,
just means
aka
law.
Yeah, aka Sharia law. They're so happy about Sharia law that they don't want to live
Sharia
in
just
Sharia
means
law.
law.
They want to go over to somewhere else. Wow, Sharia law must be really great. If they're
Law.
if they're wanting to leave that country. Wow, it sounds great.
No, to answer the question though earlier, it is the First Amendment. You're talking about the freedom of speech.
And the Third
is-
Amendment?
The Third Amendment's not freedom of speech.
What is it?
Let's see. Third
The right
Amendment.
to bear arms?
Right to bear arms, the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Second.
Third Amendment is because
Okay. That's what I was talking about.
I think it's seizure of property. Talking
Right,
about
okay.
that we don't
I was
have
talking about
to
second.
house. Oh, second being
Yeah.
yeah.
To be able
We
to
don't have
defend
to
yourself,
house
basically.
soldiers.
Being able to defend yourself, yeah.
Carl
Yep,
said something
love
great
that.
in chat. Carl said something great in chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it says
Carol?
Carol?
Yeah, Carol said something in chat. You sound beautiful when you sing
Beautiful when you sing
72.
72 Space Virgins.
Okay. So that's where that's what my wife was getting to.
Yeah, that's what she wanted
Oh,
me to say.
boy.
72. 72. Yeah.
And halal
Yes.
wine inside
Made
Jannah.
some
Halal
songs.
wine. Halal.
Hello, what?
Hey, halal, like forbidden wine inside Jannah. When wine is made by Shaitan in the Quran, but then there's wine in heaven. What? Wait a second. I thought alcohol is forbidden.
Wait a minute. So they are in hell then, are they?
Technically.
So the sex markets in Jannah are actually the sex pits of hell.
Yep.
This is for oh no, I don't want that flavor. Pork. This is pork. And I'm not gonna go to hell by eating it. That's for what's his name? Where is he? The guy that you banned.
I didn't
He's
ban
like-
anyone. We put. I know.
Yeah, the guy you put in
Carl
timeout.
B
He
put
was
in
like,
timeout.
he was like, if you eat pork, all this stuff is going on.
Again, guys in the chat, Muslims. I am inviting you guys up. Don't give me this garbage. Don't be like Aladdin, always complaining that, oh no, look, your brother in Christ banned me. Oh no, I can't ever talk to him. Like,
Eric,
look
I
at
have
my
a
ban
genius
list. He's
idea.
not on it.
I have a genius idea. Why don't you put hashtag Islam inside the description of the YouTube? Maybe because when someone searches Islam, they will be taken. This will be shown up in that page.
I mean, in
the description. If you do,
Oh, you put
hashtag.
Israel-Gaza conflict, and that will also get heaps of people.
Yep.
This guy H at 9:50 a.m. my time said the new covenant is with Muslims, and it says it is in the book that came down from God through it. The angel Gabriel. You mean the Shaitan, do you?
Yeah.
To
You
the
mean
last messenger.
Jibril, the angel?
Do you mean Jibril? The
Jibril.
Shaitan disguised as Jibril. It's just
Read.
most too arrogance to accept the last messenger. Oh, come on. The last
Yeah,
messenger is a false
You gotta
prophet.
read.
The last messenger is a
Read, but
false
I can't
prophet.
read.
Jesus warned of false prophets. It's such a joke.
Yep. Paul did.
Such a
Paul
joke.
did especially.
Paul.
Especially that. But it's like when Jibril chokes him, he said, "Read." He says, "I can't read." Wow, that sounds really much like a prophet. You know what? A good example would be to do is watch.
prophet.
Watch Muhammad's Boom Boom Room by David Wood, where if you pull that up, he does a really good interpretation. David Wood takes on the role of the angel Jibril, and it says, "Read
I was
this."
just having that go through my mind.
Wait, you should play it. You should play it. 100%. You should play it.
I actually haven't
I don't
watched
know.
his Boom Boom Room, but he always talks about it.
I don't know if I have it. If we have it on the polemics channel.
I have
Let me check.
Boom Boom. If you look up Boom Boom, it's by Act 17 Polemics.
Yeah. Yes. We run that one.
All right. Yep. I didn't know that. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I thought David Wood did or something.
Yeah,
He
that's his old
does, but then
channel.
we manage.
Oh, yep, there is one.
Errol-
It's episode 2. Muhammad meets the angel, actually not episode 2. I found it.
You mean the real Jibril?
No, not the no, it's the other one. Jibril.
Someone has a question for Anthony. Scholarly Denizen. Question about church history, the Puritans, iconoclasm, and how that relates to Gentiles being free from the law of Moses, Acts 15.
Oh, I found it, Eric. I can post
There
it
we
in the chat.
It's in the archives.
Oh, okay.
It's on the David Wood.
I have a question for
archives.
Anthony as well, actually.
Go ahead.
Do you believe the soul resides in the brain?
Well, strictly speaking, the soul doesn't have extension in space, so it's not a
Like
material
interdimensional or something like that.
and the brain is a tool, but when you ask that, I mean, I go back in my head to I had a funny conversation a long time ago with a Scientologist who not that you want to
Scammers.
know about not all that craziness, but
We know about that. The
well,
scammers,
I was talking to a Scientologist one time. I was just a young kid. I was a Christian, but a little bit more rambunctious. Not that I wouldn't do it today still, but but he so I was asking about Scientology. I didn't know about it. He was telling me something of their beliefs. That one thing he was telling me is that when you have, let's say, a headache, he says that could be triggered by seeing a red object. And the reason for that could be, let's say you got in an accident in a previous life in a red vehicle or something like that. And so now when you see red vehicles or red, it causes you to have a headache. And so you need to go
Such
through.
BS, though.
Huh?
It's BS. They've taken ideas from Hinduism, Buddhism, reincarnation, right? And they've taken the whole superstitious thing that people have.
Yeah. So
sci-fi.
He was describing this to me, and I thought, yeah, this is bizarre. So he was explaining that you need to go through their process of being cleansed. Their whole, I forget what they call it. They have an e-meter and I forget what they call that process. But anyways, this is supposed to clear those things out. You're supposed to be cleared, right? So that these past problems are no longer present troubles. And they call these, gray areas or whatever. So these gray areas need to be cleared.
I've heard that, yeah.
And so, anyways, so as I'm talking to this guy, he starts explaining to me that we're all just these spiritual thetans who were playing a game one day, and they created this world, and then somehow became trapped in it and need to escape from it to reattain their former situation. And the body is not really who you are. You're really a thetan. And so he drew this picture on a board where he put like a human head, and then he put this little dot that was supposed to represent the thetan inside the head. And I said to him, wait a minute. I said, I've seen this movie. I said, you're describing Men in Black. Remember that little scene where there's that little alien guy sitting up in the head? It's like a ship.
Yeah.
He's steering it. And I was making fun of this guy's beliefs all along the way. This wasn't the first thing I said. And he got so upset he started cussing at me. And I said, wow. Looks like I hit a gray area.
Yeah.
You might need to be cleared because
oh my gosh.
Yeah, Truth Defenders got it. Engrams. That's the whole process or whatever. So anyways,
crikey.
When you asked me that, it reminded me of it. But yeah, I mean, strictly,
it's funny how triggered they get though. Like,
oh yeah,
it just shows that there's worshiping a false god, essentially, right? Something that they've created in their own mind. It's like, is that giving them hope? Is that giving them peace? Is that giving them, a pleasant attitude to people when they're questioned about their own thing?
Yeah. Also, one thing to add, I could be mistaken, but don't they believe in like an alien that created them or something?
Yeah, I don't remember their whole.
Yeah, it's the whole thing, like aliens coming down to Earth and stuff.
Yeah, I know that they say our true identity is we are Thetans, which Robert Morey, Christian apologist, used to say just sounds like Satan with a lisp.
It does.
Mike Tyson saying it. Mike Tyson saying it. Mike Tyson.
I thought you were saying that unironically. I thought you were saying there were like a bunch of little devils that had like a little fight, and then they somehow created an existence for themselves or something.
That's where I was going too, but then as it progressed, I was like, no, they actually, no, that's real. They actually believe that. If you guys believe that, stop smoking whatever you're smoking
hashish
and see a doctor right now, because there's something going on.
Well, I mean, the whole you can watch documentaries. It's all money making, isn't it? Like, it's all, that's why it's embedded in Hollywood, right? That the Scientologists, they're just after money.
This is more ridiculous than Mormonism and Islam combined. This is more ridiculous than Mormonism and Islam.
Yeah, Scientology is super obvious con, and then Mormonism's an obvious con, and people still
with Joseph Smith. Yeah,
Islam isn't a con. Yeah.
So, quick question for Roger. Probably not going to be quick, but question for A. Raj there.
I might chime out now. I might go watch David Wood AP.
Well, thank you very much for joining. It's not 20 past yet, so you still have time.
Oh yeah, they're normally late, aren't they? No, it's all right. I got stuff to do. But thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Right. Nice to meet you all.
Pleasure. So do you see the question there?
Yeah.
Yes, barely, given my poor labored eyesight. So if Gentiles are free from the law of Moses, Acts 15, why did some reformers insist that Christians destroy art in the church based on the Decalogue prohibition? So number one, when we make the observation that the Mosaic covenant has been rendered obsolete. That's not equivalent to saying the Old Testament is not the Word of God, that its theological deliverances are no longer true, or that its moral norms are no longer properly the standard of right and wrong. The New Testament, just as certainly as the Old, says the same things theologically and ethically, right? The Old Testament speaks against having other gods, so does the New. The Old Testament speaks against idolatry, worshiping God in an idolatrous fashion, so does the New. The Old Testament speaks against blasphemy, so does the New. And Jesus says in the New Testament, the whole Decalogue, that is the 10 Commandments, rests upon the duty to love God and neighbor. When you look at the Decalogue, the first 4 express our duty towards God, and the last 6 our duty towards our fellow man. That spells out what it looks like to love God and neighbor. Of course, the New Testament enhances our understanding of that. It's not that it teaches a different ethic, but it certainly does intensify our understanding of that ethic. So it's not the case that the New Covenant brings with it some new theological system or new normative, ethical or normative ethic or something like that. What is usually in view when the Mosaic administration is viewed as obsolete is the outward form of how God administered the covenant to the people. That is the priesthood, the temple, the sacrifices, all the other rituals that went along with that. But even that, truth be told, still has application, right? I was talking about this earlier. The New Testament thinks that even those ceremonies have instructive value for the Christian. So Paul will often have some recourse to these ceremonies and say that they're of relevance to the Christian in terms of how he frames his life, right? So the Old Testament distinction between clean and unclean. Under the Old Covenant, they were not to eat certain things and they could eat other things. In the New Covenant, there's still a principle there that believers are to be holy, separated unto God, and they're not to enmesh themselves in pagan practices or pagan practices, right? Pagan behaviors. So when the Reformers looked at how you're supposed to worship, I mean, they're not only being consistent with the Old Testament, but with the New. The New Testament gives no warrant for including in the worship of God images. Now there's a spectrum though. When it comes to images, it's one thing to have art. Now, by and large, the Reformers would say that no pictorial representations of God are to be found in churches. And that's standard, not simply from the Reformers. That's as old as the early church fathers. They prohibited images of God at all. I mean, altogether. But the basic distinction is that not even art artistic representations of God were to be found in churches. Whether people had art outside of a Christian context or outside of a church was another issue, but they weren't to be reverenced or worshipped or anything like that. Right. So, I mean, that's entirely consistent with both testaments.
Okay. So welcome back, by the way. And we do have a new caller, Nick. By the way, Luke Skywalker, nice switch up there.
Thank you. I saw that laugh as soon as I changed it.
Yeah, well. Yeah, nerds got to stay together somewhere.
Yep.
There's got to be a home for us somewhere.
Yep, far, far, far in the galaxy.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Nick here. I don't know if Christian, whatever.
We're a part of
by
the
the way,
light side. We're a part of the light side with Christianity, and the dark side's Islam.
Dark side's Islam. Yeah, that sounds about right. So Nick, welcome.
What's your least favorite thing about Islam? I mean, yeah, it's a pretty loaded statement to say
Long
the dark
list.
side is Islam. All right, let's go through them. Let's go through 1 through 5.
I'd say my first one personally is, and this is one of the biggest ones for me, is that Allah is a deceiver, that he is a liar, that he's portraying himself as God. And I would hate for any God-fearing Muslim who actually pursues God, who wants to know God, who wants to have that relationship and know him personally, to get to the kingdom of heaven at the gate at the end and be turned away because he never knew him. Jesus never knew them. I think that it would be a horrendous thing. Definitely if you served your entire life dedicated to this, to only turn up as, no, it was always false. You dedicate your life for nothing.
That's
so I'd
tough.
say that is what I find most horrendous about
What's the
Islam.
funniest thing that you don't like?
It's the funniest thing that
What's
I
the
don't
funniest
like.
thing that you don't? What do you just go? No, that's not right.
The fact that most Muslims don't read their sources. I find that is the most exhausting thing, I'd say. Whenever I have any of these conversations and I bring up hadith, I'm like, guys, just read. I'm telling you, just read your own books. I'm not here telling you cannot read this stuff. Just read your own books. Read your own sources and
teaching
defeats
a
and stuff.
class on how to cite sources, MLA 5 style, MLA 6 even.
Could I add something? My least favorite, or actually not my least favorite, the most funniest sources I've ever read was about the hadith, and I think Sahih al-Bukhari, where Moses is trying to bath and everybody's saying he has scrotal hernia, and then from there, he puts
A scrotal hernia? What's that?
Yeah,
How do you get a hernia in your scrotum?
I don't know, or a scrotum problem, not a hernia, scrotum problem, or like a down there problem, and then
How do
everybody
you
says,
shave your scrotum or scrotum?
what topic is this? But
I'm
anyways,
just wondering.
I don't. Okay, but anyways,
Oh boy.
to stay on this.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah, but to add on to what I said was that inside the hadith, what I was saying, Moses is in a bath. He takes off his clothes. He puts it on a stone. The stone runs away with his clothes. He's running without clothes in front of all of the Israelites. He beats the stone, and there's still marks on the stone left on the stone to this day. That's the hadith. Or the other hadith where Satan's farting during prayer time to out-tune the
Have you ever heard of
prayers.
something called the gift of gab?
No.
It's an Irish scam where they have this thing called the Blarney Stone, and they have tourists hang upside down at this castle and kiss the stone, and it's supposedly supposed to give you good luck. Do you think that there's anything that could actually give you good luck and good fortune in this world?
No. But that just sounds just like sounding like kissing the black stone, like Islam. But by the way, Eric, you're muted.
Yep, there are parallels to Islam on that one. That's all I was going to point out, and then you nailed it on the head.
You know, another thing about that is don't ever go and kiss that stone. Children, they throw piss on that stone. Just saying.
Doesn't sound too sanitary to me personally.
Yeah,
I'd say
this is next to godliness.
If you're talking about the Quran itself, I'd have to go as far as my favorite section in there, because I think this is very easily to disprove Islam, is 54, 1 through 2. And let me share this here. This has got to be one of the biggest videos I have on this channel.
They need to call
is-
you Shake Eric.
Shake Eric. I've actually been referred to as that, believe it or not.
Do you want to
Um,
make it bigger?
Big up, Shake Eric.
It's about as big as it gets, unfortunately. I think I can. It's still funky how this works. It says, now this is Quran 54, 1 through 2, says the hour has drawn near and the moon has split in two. This is as a witness to the unbeliever. So this is supposed to be proof to me that this is something that has occurred. And if we look at the hadith, this is very clearly something that happened during the life of Muhammad. There are so many hadith who are talking about the moon splitting. And it's not just like a little crack. It's like the moon was on this side of the mountain, and then the moon is on the other half of the moon is on the other side of the mountain. So there's some serious divide here going on. And this has historically never happened. This would have been a very obvious sign. In fact, would have been very easily proven that Islam is true if this was the witness to the unbelievers. And we have historical evidence of this. Where
Can you point out a big unbeliever argument that you can just debunk?
Big unbeliever
argument. Let me rephrase. A big Islam believer argument that you can debunk. The most common Islam believer argument that you can just debunk with the most simplest explanation. Is there something that exists like that for just a one-liner that I can pull out when somebody says, you know, Allahu Akbar or something like that?
Yes. The answer to that would be Jesus was crucified. Because even in the Quran it says that he died. In Surah 4:157, it says that he was neither killed nor crucified. What's that verse, Eric, that we pulled up with the other one that says that he died?
Real quick here.
Surah 355, Allah said he would take Jesus in death to himself. So immediately after 157, in 158, it says Allah took Jesus to himself. So if 157 is denying the crucifixion, then it contradicts 355. And whatever other verse Eric has in mind here.
No, that's the one that I have up there. We do have, if you are looking at, you're just looking at one-liners real quick.
Yep.
The problem is, Quran is so unclear that you can't just use one-liners. You can use that Jesus in the Quran is confirmed to be the word of Allah, and then you take them to
if you
John
can't just use
1.
a one-liner to explain something away. Have you ever heard of the explanation? The simplest explanation is probably the right one. If you have to do a lot of mental gymnastics, then I don't think these people are going to believe what you have to say. Well, just an observation.
You're saying if they say Allahu Akbar,
that was just an example.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking, okay, someone yells that one-liner real quick. Allah being the greatest of deceivers. I think that's very clear. How can you trust anything from from someone who boasts about being the greatest of deceivers? Deceiver being not only someone who lies, but someone who actively tricks people into their lies, into believing what they are saying that is untrue. That's specifically talking about actually Allah creating Christianity when it's referred to that. Now, a lot of Muslims would point that saying, well, you see, in the English translation is translated as planner. He's the greatest of planners. No, well, the word mocker there means to deceive. It is deception. There's no way around that. Any actual Muslim who knows Arabic, or anyone that actually knows Arabic, will quickly point that out. I've had multiple Muslims just do a translation on my channel, and that's come up.
Okay, I'm going to take a U-turn.
Go ahead.
Explain the argument for Islam like I'm 5.
Can you explain that again?
I said explain the argument for Islam as if I'm 5.
Like from the Dawa standpoint?
See, a 5-year-old wouldn't understand that phrase.
Someone who is trying to promote Islam as being the truth. So you're saying their best argument to a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
Islam is simple.
The Quran is perfect. Has no
How do
contradictions.
I not understand it if it's simple?
Well, then there's the follow-up questions. It's like,
We just
why do
blew
we need
some
to
shit
go to
wide open,
scholars?
I feel like.
Yeah, why do we need to go to scholars then to understand this? Why do we need to, which is the Muslim, in fact, we just had
Why do
one
we
in
need
the
to
comments.
translate the Dead Sea Scrolls in order to figure out what people were saying? Am I right?
Can we say that one?
You know what the Dead Sea Scrolls are?
I know
You
what
don't
the
know
Dead
that
Sea Scrolls.
the Dead Sea Scrolls were translated by some guy, you know, and he said
Not
that,
just some
you know,
guy.
I don't know enough to be speaking on this topic, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
Carry on.
But yes, but to add about about the 5-year-old argument is, number one, the Quran's perfect. It's probably one of the biggest
Give me an
Dawa.
argument about 5-year-olds from a Catholicism standpoint.
I see no difference between Catholics and Christians, but so you're saying a Christian's argument.
No, never mind. You didn't. No. Carry on. I apologize.
No worries. But what I would say about the Dead Sea Scrolls, about translations, the translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls were not just like they were very much studied. I don't know all the things about it, but especially the Dead Sea Scrolls with both Sinai and Atticus is another good example, but a lot of them were very much like translated. I don't know who exactly translated, but I know that there's over, I think, 10,000 copies of both the Old and New Testament copies, which were then translated. Eric can speak on this more if he has anything.
So real quick, Nick, just a couple of clarifications so we know where your standpoint is, where it comes from. What would you say you are?
Nothing.
None of the above.
Nothing.
You gotta say
And
something.
everything.
You gotta say you're something. Well, then that's a contradictory statement there. You are something, but you are nothing, but you are everything.
What is a woman?
A female of the species.
I agree. I'm a man.
There you go.
All
I'm
right.
a man, and I am being affected by society. That's what I am.
Are you a theist? Are you agnostic? We got to just get some common ground.
Yeah, I'm agnostic, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, agnostic. So we first need to establish God's existence.
So we know where you're coming from on that.
All right.
Okay. Just because we have people coming in and going as please and not really knowing.
So a question for you, Nick, is agnostic. Were you just agnostic because like something just happened, or were you just agnostic because for your entire life? I'm not trying to get personal, but I'm just trying to see that way I know what standard I can go by in order to help you.
Oh, you know, I just been chilling. There ain't no point in not being agnostic. For me, at least, I can take all of the religious principles and just not be religious. How about that?
Isn't that just taking all the benefits without the religion? That's pretty much what Richard Dawkins did.
I go to the church and I take out of the basket, you know?
So you're pretty much being like Richard Dawkins.
I don't know who that is.
Richard Dawkins is a very much atheist, and he's very cultural Christian. He wants all the aspects of Christianity, but does not want Christianity, which exactly what David Wood said in one of his newest videos.
Sure.
So
I don't know.
Let me see if I understand your perspective. Your perspective is that all religions are true or that none are true?
My perspective is it doesn't matter if they're true or not, really. And the teachings are what matter, and not the fact that all of this stuff historically happened.
So your perspective is that the teachings are what is valuable.
Yeah.
Not if they're true or not.
Mm-hmm. What does it matter if Santa Claus was real? What matters is the message of giving without expecting anything in return.
So what would you say is the message of Christianity then, by your understanding?
Don't do bad shit.
Not even close.
Then what is it for you?
Jesus Christ.
It could be as many things as you want it to be, and that tells me a lot about your personality if you choose to dwell on the negative shit.
Nope. It's not what I choose it to be. That's irrelevant. It
No,
is
it
what
isn't.
it says
It
is.
isn't irrelevant. And you
It's what
can
the
say what it
doctrines are
says it is. You can
teaching.
interpret it as many times as you want. There is no objective truth when it comes to interpretation.
There is.
There it
Actually.
is.
There isn't.
That is what it says. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
That's
No one
historical.
enters into heaven except through me.
Revelation.
So if that's the teaching of Christianity, that Jesus Christ is the only way, the truth, and the life, demonstrated through his life,
Do you know
by
that, like,
dying upon the cross, paying for the sins of humanity, something we could not pay upon our own, as taught in the Bible, then that's what we're left with.
or we're left with a mistranslation, but it doesn't matter.
What do you mean by mistranslation?
You're saying that people don't
I'm just
read.
saying you could interpret that any way you want. Even like if somebody doesn't speak English and they just go, "I speak English," this yada yada yada. But you know,
this is the fallacy that you're making. The historic
it doesn't matter that I'm making a fallacy.
It does actually matter that you're making a fallacy because
Does
the
it?
Hebrew and Aramaic language are different than the English.
It
language.
doesn't, because I'm not going to change what you believe.
We're not. I'm going off historical. I'm going off history.
I'm going off of anecdotal.
So are you, I guess you would say that you're a moral relativist then? Correct?
It doesn't matter what I am. What does a label
Yes,
matter?
that
Why
would
does a
be the
label
definition.
matter?
That would be the definition.
I just take what I'm saying at face value. That's all I'm
Take
saying.
what you're saying at face value.
Yeah.
That you wait.
I'm trying
let
to
me-
look deeper into everything, man.
do not try to understand. Just take it. Just blind faith. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm
Don't
pointing
actually
out
do the
that everything
research because that would be
nothing I'm
bad.
saying has any deeper meaning because I'm smoking a joint and I'm very high.
All right. So is everything God to you? Is everybody God? Everything's God, or how's
No,
how
there
do
is
you
there really, it doesn't matter if anything's God.
Okay,
so why
so-
would you look for it?
Why would you look for truth? Is because
Because you're in a time, you're in tough times. You need answers.
No.
Yeah.
You look for
Stop
meaning.
trying to
You look for
answer other
purpose.
people.
You look for
You
meaning.
just rephrased, bro. You just rephrased
No, I didn't
what
say
I said.
tough
huh?
time. No, I said
You just
I
said
didn't
you're
say
looking
tough
for
time.
meaning. Well, take the tough times out of it. It doesn't matter. If you're
Oh,
looking
yes.
for meaning, you're either in
Your
a tough
words
time
matter,
or
brother.
you're just looking for meaning.
Yeah, looking for meaning.
The intention's
okay.
the same.
The intention's not the same because between a tough time and say, "Oh, I'm in a happy place in my life, but I want to know where did I come from," that's a huge difference. There's a difference
it
between me. Yes, there is. There's a difference between me
No, there
depressed in
isn't.
the dumps and me being happy. There's
Is
a
there?
difference. Yes, there is.
Not
We
chemically.
do need to establish in this
Chemically,
live
yes,
stream
I mean.
that there is no speaking over each other.
Oh, I've been
So
doing it all the
if-
time, so there is.
Well, I'm just making it clear. We're cutting that out.
All right.
Okay. Just
Fair
because I
enough.
want to be able to hear everything, and I can't hear it if you guys are talking over each other. That's simple.
To continue what I was
Basic.
saying though, Nick, but what I was continuing to say, there's a difference between me being happy and there's a difference for me being depressed. When you're depressed, you're down in the dumps. When you're happy, you're very much more happy. You have lived happier and you're looking for meaning. Either way, you're looking for meaning because that's what my point was. But you tried to say that there's no objective truth. There is one objective truth. Let me give you an example. Scientifically, 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, but there's
That is
one
it.
objective truth to you.
I didn't finish my thought.
Yeah, you can continue.
But there's an objective truth where 2 + 2 = 4. No matter how you look at it, it is 2 + 2 = 4. That is fact. That's my point. That there are things that are absolutely fact that you can't deny
Well, I mean, people do it all the time, though.
because they're delusional. They don't live
Well,
in reality. They live
Why
in
does it
la la
matter if
land
they do or not? They still do it.
Okay.
because you have to deal with life.
Let's try to boil this down deeper. Boil it down to the brass tacks here. Is there, because you said it's morally wrong to you, so that would be that you have your
I didn't say
morality.
anything
have my
about morals at all.
morality, and we're talking over each other again.
Yeah, but you're saying things.
Okay, again, morality is your stance.
First
Just
of all,
quick
I said-
question- a quick question here, or else we're done. We need to just establish some basic principles. Is your morality that everyone has their own individual morality and it's all fine? That's it.
First of all, I didn't say anything about morality. And second of all, yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, so everyone has their own personal morality. They define their own morality, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So what is to stop one person from abusing another person then? Why would that be morally wrong?
It wouldn't be, depending on who you ask.
So it wouldn't be wrong. So let's say, pulling him out because he's an easy punching bag in history, Hitler executing all the Jews. Was that morally wrong for him to do?
Not according to him.
I'm just asking in period. Was it morally wrong? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, obviously, to me, yes, but to anybody
Why?
else, they can just make their own decision. Why does it matter to me? Why?
Why? Well, it does matter. Because the reactions do matter. Does someone else's life actually matter?
In
or
what context?
not?
As a whole, that's what it means. Is
In
what
what
he's
context?
asking. In what context?
In general, does someone else's life matter at all?
To me, yes,
Why?
because I don't want to kill anybody.
Why?
Why?
Because I would feel bad if I did.
Why?
Because as a human, I relate to that other human, but I wouldn't feel bad about killing an animal because I
That's
don't relate as
empathy.
much to it.
That's empathy.
That's why.
That's
empathy. But why is that rooted? Because it doesn't matter, right? So
It
someone
doesn't.
else that's a sociopath.
If we
can say,
boil
"I'll
everything
just kill
down, once I
everyone."
die, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so can you live a life where you murder everybody that in your sight, and then when you're in jail, you just laugh there like a psychopath, and that's completely fine?
Now, once I'm in jail, it still matters from my perspective. But once my perspective's done, my perspective's done. And if I did anything to leave a lasting mark, that shit is also still there. But like anything, it goes away over time.
All right. Okay, so let me establish one thing. Okay, are you wearing an orange hat on your head? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an absolute truth.
Not to a colorblind person.
Well, just because
Why does what makes their perspective
My
valid?
orange isn't your orange.
What makes that perspective valid?
What do you mean? What makes it valid? Nothing.
What does it matter?
It doesn't.
So nothing matters. So death of individuals doesn't matter. Death of children doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
To me, but
Is that
not
what
in
you're
the
saying?
cosmos of
Well,
the
you're saying
universe.
to you, well, again, it doesn't matter. You said that it's just personal morality. So Hitler was justified in his actions on killing Jewish kids, correct?
Not from my perspective, let's get that clear, but anybody could say that.
Why?
Yes. Anybody could make the mental gymnastic argument to make that true.
Why would it be from your perspective? And you can say, well, it's just empathy. I just feel bad for the other people. But why? Why does it matter at all? Because why is your morality make it so that is bad?
Because I have lived the human experience and I have empathy towards those humans, as you said before.
What is a human then?
I don't know, just some animal.
I don't
Okay,
know,
is
just
there any
some
difference?
animal.
What's an animal?
Organism with a organism that is conscious to a point is how I would describe that.
All right, so there's absolutely that's absolutely true that you're a mammal, right? Absolutely true.
From the definition of what a mammal is, yes.
Oh wait, so I thought there's not everything is absolutely true.
Yeah, but if you go and change the definition of what a mammal is, somebody fucking came up with that definition. So
they're just using facts and using logic and using.
They're using facts to describe something, and a mammal is a definition which is just whatever the fucking definition of a mammal is, which is just a group of description words. So you could just describe anything and call it something and then make it an objective truth. I can describe this table and call it a mammal. If
well,
the
you just
word
said
mammal wasn't.
you would make an objective truth. How would you make it an objective truth then?
I would describe it, and then it would become an objective truth.
By whose authority?
By whoever just said it first. That's my entire argument.
So someone can just say whatever they want.
Yeah, God
and
did.
that's the way it
in
is.
your
There's
eyes.
no rhyme or reason.
Wait, you just said God did. Hold up.
I said God did in your eyes.
No, you didn't. You just said God did.
I said in your eyes, God did.
Oh, never mind. I didn't hear. Sorry.
So,
Sorry.
So God did in your eyes. It's all perspective. Nothing matters. Life is meaningless.
I didn't say that either.
Okay, what's the meaning of life then?
To do whatever makes you fucking happy from your perspective.
So from
That's
a
what the
rapist's
meaning
point of
life
view, he's perfectly fine raping people.
in
if it
his
makes
head,
him
that's
happy.
his meaning in life. That's in his head. I didn't say it was fine. He thinks it's fine.
Well, you just defined
And-
it as fine. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think that guy just came in there to argue, to be honest with you. And people keep on saying to kick me in the chat that I'm falling off. Like,
Yeah, you should have kicked him off when he started using the F word.
I feel like he was just stoned out of his mind. I'm not trying to be mean.
Oh, I did say anyone can come and debate. So he's had his time, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. The spotlight's
So-
off him now. Yeah.
So that's the problem with personal morality only, is it's personal to you, and it can be just you can use that to justify any absolutely evil or debased act.
Yep.
Yeah, if morality is subjective, then there's nothing right or wrong.
Yeah, so that's a huge issue.
There's a guy in the chat saying, Tico saying, boo, bring Nick back. I don't understand why people do this.
Don't know.
Just trolls.
He was spinning. He wasn't spinning anything. Well, he's spinning the truth, twisting it
Yeah.
to his own devices. The fact is, if you just believe that it is your own personal morality that matters, and that is it, then the God is you.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like Hinduism.
Yeah.
Sounds like Hinduism. It's the root of a lot of different things. Even if you look back at the polytheistic religions, a lot of times you see that even there as well. You see that in Zeus, where it's a.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have ADHD. That kind of makes me a little bit more acceptable. But what I'd like to say is, especially in ancient Egypt, I've read a book about this in my class, or not my class, but like picked up it from a library, where a lot of the concepts were like you had a mind, you had a spirit, and when you died, these kings would be dressed up in jewelry before they go to the underworld or another world and make their own worlds and stuff like that. Like that's especially part of the polytheistic roots. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. So yes, we've got some saying that he's just trolling. Truth defenders there, saying that he was just trolling in his basement. Yeah, he wasn't really seeking. He didn't really have any questions. He just wanted to try to get a rise out of someone, and it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. Think through it logically. It does not work.
Yep.
Nope. Sorry. Going through life saying, well, it's just all pleasures, all I'm pursuing. Well, then you can justify anything, including such heinous acts as rape, murder, incest, whatever it is. You can justify it as he did right there. Live.
Some atheists don't have a problem with incest.
I think he doesn't even know what an atheist or agnostic is. I feel like that's the way he's acting.
Well, I don't know if he knows much of anything.
It feels like he just has zero, like, I don't mean this in a mean way, but it just feels like he has like 0.1 brain cells. Like, I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean the way he was acting.
Well, let's keep it. He did come on here. He did talk. He wasn't able to present any good arguments. His whole argument is it's just meaningless, and it's all based upon your own personal perception.
I didn't mean that in a mean way when I said that, but it just, I feel like he wasn't even trying to think like clearly about what he was trying to say, because he contradicted himself multiple times. He's defined what a mammal is, but then he contradicted yet again. Like he's contradicting what he's already said.
It's why you just ask. You push in. Why do you believe that? What is
Yeah.
the point of that? Why is that a thing? Okay, let's actually get to the root of the reason. And the root is, well, I'm compassionate for other individuals because I've lived this life too. Well, where does that compassion come from? Well, my own personal prospects on this. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Now, does it?
Yeah, also, he said that he wouldn't have a problem killing an animal. Then he said, sorry, yeah, killing an animal. He wouldn't have a problem killing an animal. But then he said human beings are mammals. So he shouldn't have problems killing a human being.
Or even a whale for that matter, because that's a mammal. Which doesn't make any logical sense.
Oh, by the way, I made another presentation, and I'm gonna remake the video.
Yeah, go ahead and, like I said, just email me that link whenever you're ready, and I'll take a look at it. So I think we're about ready to wrap it up. I have one other person that I've invited to join us here.
All right.
And if they join, they join. If not, well, I'll give them a couple of minutes to decide. If they decide not to, well, unfortunately, the people I invited to join us a couple weeks ago did not end up joining us. So that was unfortunate. I was hoping to continue those conversations. I think they were very good conversations. But unfortunately, not. So, okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
I'm actually trying to get a friend of mine to see if he can invite any Muslims.
Well, I think we'll pretty much wrap it up here for now. I will have more call-ins that will be available for more people to join. I do these open Q&As once a month that anyone's welcome to join, and we'll have a conversation, at least until they go off the rails.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, are we allowed to talk on private after this, or do you have to go to bed?
We can talk a bit privately after the live stream. So I'll
Okay.
hang out a little bit and we can have a conversation. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Please hit the like button, share, comment below, and I'll see you next time.